It's awesome.
But it should be a little more efficient here.
No, it was all for them. That's what's
It's coming,
great.
coming in,
I know what's that.
your day is coming, your day is coming. That's right.
You know what?
We had less members.
Yeah, we were
Just
just
like
like,
we didn't barely had a quorum.
Phil said, we're not dealing with this today.
That's right, keep things officially moving forward.
It was very delightful.
Speaking of changing over, when's the details on the big Christmas party he'll keep talking about?
That's up to.
Was yours so bad? Was yours, I mean, I know we went really long.
No, it was,
Dennis.
it was Dennis. Yeah, Dennis was one who got rid of it.
Yeah. And then
Well, you know,
yours, we
since
went
we'll be here
like
all
so
day on December 22nd, that gives a wide variety of options.
Listen, if you bring your little spread like you did one time, that was awesome. That made me happy. Solid. That was.
I did not have the minutes that you printed.
I didn't even come over here, did you?
Oh, so this is that.
Oh, you took those for the eighth? I gave them to you because I actually didn't lose them.
Those are the ones that were first.
Well, when he takes, normally, you know, I give them to him, no, we have partially signed it. And he came back in on Tuesday, 2 days ago, because he'd been off. He said, did you have the minutes? And I said, well, yeah, somewhere. And when I was grabbing my,
Yeah, those.
Yeah,
the last thing, when I looked at what I've done is I stuck it in here, so.
Oh, well, yes. Do they use?
Yeah.
Back to him, and I said, okay, now they're yours.
All right, we're about ready to start, guys. We'll now call to order the October 13th meeting of the Ohio Elections Commission. Would the executive director please call a roll?
Mr. Lyle,
Present.
Mr. Craig, present. Ms. Tavares,
Here,
Ms. Hagan,
present.
Mr. Knight,
Here.
Vice Chair Kaufman,
Present.
Chair B.
Present.
All members of the Ohio Elections Commission are present.
The first order of business, it is to approve the regular meeting minutes of the September 29th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, there's been a motion that's been duly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
That's
Please note my abstention, please. That was.
Okay, yes, yes. 2 abstentions, 80 and 5-0. All right, a change in the agenda. We have, we're going to take first, case number 2022R-424, Bobby Mitchell et al. We have people attending, in that matter. What's set for today is the issue of whether this set,
correct.
Mr. Executive Director would like to introduce
Yes.
the case of Frank Nation.
This is a referral from, excuse me, from the Fairfield County Board of Elections concerning certain campaign finance reports that, depending on how you want to look at it, were not filed timely during the process of completing. I had conversation with the staff at the board that expressed to me certain concerns that they had with the nature of the reports. My recommendation currently is to set for hearing. I was given an understanding that I thought someone from the Fairfield County Board and or the prosecutor's office might be here to discuss their perspective on it. Obviously, where are we at? We're at 10:07. They're not here yet. I haven't heard anything else. So there was a response, a couple of responses submitted. Mr. Brown is here on behalf of his client, which is the Mitchell Committee, and the treasurer. Then I'll give you a second to speak. But I noticed at the conclusion of the affidavit that Colasante, the treasurer, indicated that she was still working with the board. And so I guess I'd ask, has that been resolved? What's the status of that? Because the impression, part of my reason, two reasons why I was to set it for hearing was, one, the comments that I've been given by the board. And secondly, the fact that her statement said there was still work to be done and that she was working through it. And so that will certainly impact the nature of my recommendation, if it's resolved or not. Because the other thing is we could just kick it and continue it until all the reports are properly completed, because the board did not give me an indication that everything's been completed. Anyway, if the commission would like to, we could certainly hear from Mr. Brown on behalf of his clients.
Okay, Mr. Brown, what's your?
Thank you, Mr. President, and to the board. When we did the original affidavit, it was submitted by the treasurer, and at that time, there are 3 reports at play. The first 2 were done and approved by the Board of Elections. The 3rd report was still being worked on. And as of 2 days ago, I spoke to the treasurer. She told me that she believes everything is done and is correct, and they're ready to close the committee. But she sent an email to the Board of Elections and has not heard back to get their confirmation of that, which they actually confirmed on the first 2 reports. She said as far as Secretary of State's gone, she talked to the Secretary of State, and that's all cleared as well. So as of right now, we're just waiting for a confirmation from the Board of Elections that they're happy with what they have currently, and our expectation is that they will be.
Okay, all right, any questions from the commission?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, would you expect then there'll be a resolution of this matter, maybe based on what you know at this time, within, let's say, the next 2 weeks?
To Mr. Kreis and to the committee, to the president. I think there should be a resolution, and that our expectation is that the board will approve of the current filings as they are. And I would note that right now, I think it's unusual for a complaint to come from the Board of Elections to the Ohio Elections Commission for an ongoing process of amending. And so I thought, and I think we said even in the affidavit, that this was somewhat premature, because I've worked with many campaigns, even with the most sophisticated ones, people running successful candidates for governor and Secretary of State and other, where you have the best law firms and the best people, and we've had to do amendments after, things were submitted. So I just don't really know why they referred it to the Elections Commission. The narrative from my client's standpoint is in the affidavit. And apparently if she had simply sent an email before May 18th, it would not have been referred to the Elections Commission. So I felt that it was premature at the time. And to answer your question, there's a series of emails which I've submitted. There's another dozen emails that I have not submitted yet since we've submitted that last affidavit. And those show a constant process of trying to get it right and trying to communicate. And some of it actually was the system. When you entered in the numbers, you weren't able to enter in certain things. And so there's emails show all of that. The ones you have actually show that as well, up to the point we filed the affidavit. And so to answer your question, I do think it's going to be resolved. And I think that our expectation is the Board of Elections will clear what's been filed at this time.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Comment from the executive director?
I'm inclined to just continue it. It then becomes a matter of to when. I mean, the next 3 meetings of the commission on the 27th of October, November 3rd, and then December 8th, I think it is. suggestions on what might be the best one to go forward? I mean, I'd love to move it to the 27th, but if that's too quick and too early, you know, I don't want to,
Mr. President,
I don't want to force that.
apologies.
That's okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mr. President, my recommendation would be to, order my client to verify that the Board of Elections is, satisfied with the filings and have a continuance based on, if it's not done by the next hearing, then we'll go forward with the continuance. But I think we can validate that it's been cleared and the Board of Elections is satisfied within a month.
Mr. Executive Director, I mean, what's your, in an instance like this, what's your,
I'm fine with that. I mean, if, you know, if we just continue the matter and I can bring it back, notify, Mr. Brown notified the board if they want to appear, you know, which they gave me an impression they were going to. And his client, you know, and then once they respond to me and if they say everything's fine, I can stick it on whichever meeting and just let you know when it's gonna go forward based on what I get from either her or from the board. We always just like to get confirmation from the board that the reports that are submitted are acceptable to them and that everything's fine from their perspective. So if I get that, I'll just set it forward, whatever it works, and then I'll, you know, just advise everybody when it's gonna go forward. So just continue the matter.
okay, what's the downside of just putting the date out there and then it's just on there and everybody knows they need to get their act together? that date?
I mean, okay, I guess the way I would say it is, let's say we set it for the 27th.
No, not that date. That's
What?
too soon.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You know, let's say we set it for the 27th and, you know, there's an issue with it and the board can't work it out. They go back and forth, then all of a sudden we set it for the 27th. And, you know, unfortunately for him, Mr. Brown has to appear and say, well, we're not done yet. The board still has issues and they're still trying to work through it. Whereas if we just continue the matter, even if nothing eventually comes my way, as Chris and I will talk about, I mean, we just, you know, refer to it as putting it back in the hopper. And then, you know, 4 or 5 months, 6 months out, we'll send out notice again saying the matter is going to be continued to, I don't know, May 5th, just to throw a date out there. You know, and then there's been more than enough time to go through all those issues.
Any other comments from any other commissioners on that issue about?
I do see what you're saying, because on here it says, this was September 3rd, and she said, Krista Calasante said that it should be in full compliance by next week, which would have been the middle of September. So I see what you're saying is, if you give a date where you say this has to be done, get your ducks in a row. I see your point, but also.
Yeah, and from my perspective, Mr. Brown may have a different opinion. From my perspective, it's kind of a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I don't, you know, I've done both through the years and seen both of those kind of circumstances arise where, you know, sometimes it gets done and other times they come back in, somebody comes back in and says, well, we're still working on it. We need a little more time.
Mr. President, that's what happened after that affidavit. She submitted what she thought would be sufficient. And then the Board of Elections came back and asked for 2 other items. And it turned out one of them was, what happened? This is what happened. There's this lady who talks to you on the phone, then there's a lady who makes the decisions at the Board of Elections. Lady on the phone said there's 2 issues you have to fix. The lady who makes the decisions got on the phone with the treasurer and said, no, I only want you to deal with one of them. And that has been dealt with. And that's why we think we're done now, but we haven't heard back from the Board of Elections yet. And there was definitely confusion on the Board of Elections part. Like I said, when we try to, you know, do the final on this, I'll give you the emails as an exhibit. You'll see the chain I'm talking about. And so I guess what I'm saying is just continuing it. And if we do get wrapped up, I'll ask the Board of Elections to dismiss it, and then we can cancel it that way. If they don't want to dismiss it, then that's their choice.
Well, do you feel that a likelihood of setting a certain date would move that process, you know, forward?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any other comments from any other commissioners?
My recommendation would be November 3rd, but, you know, That gives, that gives.
That sounds good.
Okay.
And we're going to send down, we're going to continue the matter until November the 3rd.
That's
In
my,
the event the matter hasn't been resolved, then we'll proceed with the hearing on that date. Is that what we're saying?
no, no,
We're just continuing.
We're just continuing. Okay.
Is there a motion?
Motion is second.
Moved and seconded, aye.
Right?
Okay. No further-
I
if there's no
I missed,
further-
I missed the motion, was the motion for November 3rd?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, is what.
There's all kind of under the radar. You guys know.
Fair enough.
Okay, is there any further discussion on the motion? That we move to November 3rd? Continue to November 3rd? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Keep in touch.
Thank you, committee. Or commission.
Oh, okay.
Did I miss it?
You don't have- No, I was seeing if you had a matter that you have addressed.
Thank you. I believe commission or the committee for David Leland was on the agenda today.
It's been continued. Mr. Yeah, for me to say, counsel for Mr. Leland indicated that his wife is having some sort of a surgical procedure today, and asked if it could be kicked to a later date, and so we moved it to November 3rd.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Okay, Mr. Zink.
Chris talked to him a little bit today.
All right, Mr. Executive Director, before we move to do considerations of the ring other matters, we should,
No,
Chris, do you need to see who's on the,
He's a reporter,
just a report?
just a reporter, was observing.
Okay. Okay, now we will turn our attention to the group considerations. The first category cases, is, yes, we'll notice that these matters are withdrawn by the Board of Elections.
correct.
All right, that would be case number 2022-2R-393, case 2022-R-395. Mr. Executive Director.
The Board of Elections is, after submitting the referral to us, the board subsequently contacted us and indicated that they had discovered that reports that they were being referred for had actually been filed, and so they asked that these matters be withdrawn. Based on the statutory scheme, the mere fact that they have done that is sufficient to withdraw them. We just keep them on the agenda so that we can publicly acknowledge the withdrawal. There's no further action needed by the commission.
Okay, thank you very much. The next category of cases is where the executive director for the executive director finds a violation, but for good cause shown, has no penalty. Is that correct, Ms. Hadley?
Yes, these are generally circumstances where the individuals or the committees, whichever the case, or the committee, I should say, are before the commission for the first time, have filed their reports. The filing occurred within a week or so of the due date for the filing, and a response was submitted to the commission giving a reasonable explanation, so that my recommendation is for the commission to find a violation because the report was late, but for good cause, not impose a fine or refer the matter to further prosecution.
Okay, thank you very much. That would be in case number 2022-R-389, 2022-R-392, 2022-R-397, R-398, 2022-R-403, 2022-R-408, 2022-R-428, 2022-R-429, 2022-R-407, 2022-R-49, 2022-R-440. Do the commissioners have any comments or questions on any of these matters? And as the executive director, additional comments on these? Okay, hearing no comments, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we follow the recommendation of the executive director.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried by a vote of 7-0. Okay, the category of cases is the executive director's $50 fine category. That'd be case number 2022 R-382, 2022 R-383, 2022 R-390, 2022 R-394, 2022 R-2022 R-402 R-4 2022 R-407, 2022 R-9, 2 R-410, 2022 dash 2022 R-30, and special note that 2022 R-432, which is Charter Campaign Committee that was held over from last time.
22 or 373. was
Oh,
the- from last
Okay, 373. Okay, 2022 R-432, 2022 R-378. Mr. Richter, comments on this group?
Generally speaking, these are cases where the report was filed, but it was beyond about a week or 10 days from the due date for filing, and a response was submitted to the commission. But as someone who's before the commission for the first time, there are a couple in there where I think there are persons that were before the commission for the second time. We had a conversation in the middle of the week, earlier in the week with Mr. Lyle concerning consistency and recommendation. And the individuals in that circumstance, my recollection is they'd filed their report within about a week, but they already had it prior, and so going to $100 seemed a bit harsh. And so I'm recommending that we find a violation as opposed to find a $50.
Second.
We have a motion that's been duly seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. Motion carries by a vote of 7-0. Okay, we, in the next category, so we need a pause. We do have a refusal from one of the commissioners. Would you put your refusal on the record, please?
Mr. Chair, I would like to recuse myself from case 2022 R-33.
Okay. On the record that the commissioner is leaving the room.
While he is doing so, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this case as well as the last couple on the other recommendation were on the last meeting, but with Mr. Lyle's recusal not reflecting a quorum at that time, decided to just go ahead and hand it over to this meeting. The recommendation that I'm making is the same one that I made 2 weeks ago when the commission met, but now that we have a commission is back before us. This is a situation where they submitted a response. The report was submitted beyond about a week or 10 days from the due date. And so my recommendation is to find a violation and impose a fine of $50.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. Motion carries by a vote of 6-0. Oh, yes.
It's actually, so when we have an instance like this.
Somebody we gotta talk to.
Yeah.
Something to do with them, it's called that.
It would be for the full meeting agenda, because I wouldn't want to take away, for a mere case, a commissioner's ability to otherwise act on matters before the commission. Certainly, I think the argument is there that we should have someone come in and replace for that case based on whenever the alternates are appointed. But as of yet, no appointments have been made.
I saw the governor's appointments listed
I went,
yesterday, and there's not on there.
I went through, yeah, as of October 7th,
Yeah.
I saw, and there was a laundry list, but there was nothing related to the Elections Commission on that laundry list, so. That will be something that we guess we gotta do in the future. But when there's no one available, that cannot be done. Having someone come in.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, the next category of cases is in the $100 fine category. That'd be case number 2022-R-386, 2022-R-416. Mr. Richter?
These are generally cases where the person has been before the commission at least one time prior. The reports were late enough that I felt like it merited more than a $50 fine. In the case of like 386, we have various reports that were due. And the most recent was filed on October 10th. Again, Mr. Owens and Ms. Hill both had extended periods of time until the reports were filed, but they were filed and a response was submitted. But my recommendation is to find a violation and impose a fine of $100.
Okay, do the commissioners have any questions or comments on any of these matters? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll move the recommendation of the executive director.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. The motion carries by a vote of 7-0. The next category is the $150 fine category.
No, I got rid of that one too. The Hill filed a response and moved up to the $100. And so we're off to the next case on the next page.
Okay, well, we need to reflect the record that,
You read
case
it.
number, okay,
Yeah. Or did you?
Actually,
Oh,
he did not. I was gonna say something, but I thought perhaps I missed it, so I kept my mouth shut. He did not read it off.
I'm sorry.
all right, we're at the $100 fine category. That's case number 2022-R-438. We've heard the executive director's recommendation, explanation. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Is there any further discussion of the motion? All in favor? Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. Okay. Motion carried by a vote of 7-0. Okay, the next category of cases, executive director's recommendation is no violation against the treasurer, violation and impose a fine of $2,000 against the committee and the candidate. That would be case number 2022-R-436. Mr. Executive Director, please give your explanation.
Yeah, this is a little interesting. Let me call up my ICW here real quickly. This candidate has been before the commission on numerous occasions. Get the exact number here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the 6th time. And we did a number of impositions of the per diem fines, but with the last case that was decided in June of 2021, we found a violation imposed a $1,000 fine based on the lateness. I think there was no response submitted. A report was finally filed at that point. Don't ask me when, but it was for failure to file the 2020 annual. That fine has never been paid. Now they came back again, this one for a failure to maintain a separate bank account. We didn't receive a response from the treasurer. And the treasurer indicated that he's commenced action as it relates to this campaign committee in January of this year, 2022. The prior case was decided in, as I said, in June 2021. And he explained what he had done, some of the failings of the candidate, who kind of acted as his own treasurer, and some of the issues relating to that in his response, which I've reflected for all of you. Reports have been filed. This circumstance has been resolved in terms of maintaining a separate bank account. And so it sounds like this treasurer has brought the campaign committee into something of compliance. Hopefully in the future, we won't hear from them again. Alternatively, having imposed a rather substantial fine in the past based on prior cases, you can see my recommendation of the imposition of a $2,000 fine after the finding of a violation, reflects, I think, all of the various cases that we've had, but I also didn't feel like the treasurer was responsible for any of those things, considering he just took over in January, and that it sounds like he has at least worked to bring them into compliance and hopefully in compliance in the future. So that's my long-winded explanation for the recommendation, which again is to find no violation against the treasurer, find a violation and impose a $2,000 fine against the committee and the candidate. I'll be glad to answer any of the questions that you may have.
Mr. Chair, may I ask questions? Is the recommendation to impose a fine of $2,000 total, or $2,000 against each the committee and the candidate, a total of $4,000? Just how I would read the recommendation.
Yeah, no, it's 2,000. My recommendation would be $2,000 in total. And if that fine is paid, I would then consider that a resolution of the other case as well. That's the approach that I'm taking as it relates to this. So a very good question, but that's, and certainly if the commission wants to do something different, similar to what you were talking about, I don't have any problem with that, but that's my recommendation, is $2,000 in total against both the candidate and the committee, but not the treasurer.
So thank you. Do I understand? So if you look at it, it's almost $40,000 in fine, but if you pay the 2,000, we'll call it even.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Which is a big if.
Right.
Okay, any further discussion or questions on this matter? Okay, is there a motion?
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion that's been duly seconded. Any further discussion for motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, the next category of cases, the executive director's recommendation is a fine of $25 per day with a reconsideration option. This is case number 2022R-406, 2022R-415, 2022R-417, and 2022R-379. Mr. Executive Director.
I'll speak as it relates to both the 4 cases that you just read off and the remainder of the cases in which fines are imposed. These are all.
Hold on. You say the remainder of the cases which fines are imposed. What are you talking about?
The other matters that we will go and speak to as we go through the rest of this down to the continuances.
Okay.
Only because they all involve circumstances where the reports have not been filed, and that has been confirmed by the respective Board of Elections to which I reached out as it relates to the various cases. And the difference in the fine amounts from one case to another is based on the number of times that the committees have been before this commission in the past.
Okay.
And that way I don't need to speak to each individual one if you don't want me to, because that's the only difference between the ones that you just read off and each subsequent one, which the higher fine amounts, either the per diem fine amounts and or the totals, are all just reflective of the fact that the campaign committees or the PACs at issue have not filed their campaign finance reports. And again, that's been confirmed to me by the Board of Elections. I'll be glad to answer any of the questions the commission members may have.
Okay, I understand here. Did the commissioners have any questions or comments on any of these three matters? We're talking about the four matters, 406, 415, 417, 379.
Move that we follow the recommendation of the executive director, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
I will add one more thing. Item number 65, the last one on the list here, Committee for Educational Progress and School Issues, was on the last meeting. In advance of the meeting, I talked to the treasurer for that group, indicated that I would likely, continue the matter to this meeting. If he, got the reports filed and submitted a response, that would be taken into consideration. Everything would move forward. He submitted a response, and he has not had further contact with the Board of Elections or with me as it relates to filing the reports. And so I decided to just go ahead and move it forward, and hopefully we'll get the point across to him that he needs to get his reports taken care of. But I had a conversation with staff at the Hamilton County Board of Elections, which is where this was from, as it relates to that. They talked to him as well, also, and seemed to get the same impression that I did, that he was very interested in moving this thing toward resolution. But it hasn't been resolved yet, and so hopefully this will be enough to move him toward total resolution. That's my initial comment.
Okay,
There is a motion and a second.
right,
It's just a matter of-
exactly. Yes, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. Motion carried by a vote of 5-0. Okay, the next category of case, the executive director's recommendation is consolidate with case number 2021R-398, find a violation and impose a fine of $25 a day with a reconsideration option with payment of $250. We're speaking about Steve Thornberry et al., 2022R-420. Is there a motion? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. Motion carried by 7-0. The next category of case is executive director recommendation is $25 a day with a reconsideration option with payment of $250. Speaking of Sean Butler, citizen versus Butler et al., 2022R-396. Is there a motion?
Second.
Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries by a vote of 7-0. The next category case is the executive director's recommendation is for $18,475 plus $25 per day with a reconsideration option. This is case number 2022R-426. Is there a motion? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried by a vote of 7-0. Next category case, the executive director's recommendation is for a fine of $22,400 plus $100 a day with a reconsideration option. In this case, Michael Mayfield et al., case number 2022R-414. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
There's been a motion that's been duly seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. Motion carried by a vote of 7-0. Okay, the next case, executive director's recommendation is to consolidate with case number 2021R-314, find a violation and impose a fine of $22,400 plus a $100 a day reconsideration option. That's case number 2022R-431. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. Motion carries by a vote of 7-0. Okay. The next item is a recommendation by the executive director to continue to November 3rd, 22 meeting. That's case number 2022R-427, case 2022S011. Mr. Executive Director, what's the explanation here?
001. In both of these cases, the counsel for the respective committees was originally going to be here today to argue the cases that I continued from preliminary review. Mr. Hartman represents Coffee and Sammy Pack, and Mr. McTighe represents Leland for Judge. After those matters after the other matters for which they were coming to represent their respective clients at the preliminary review stage, and when those matters were continued, Mr. Hartman asked if, the other case, 22R-427 could be continued to when he would be coming up from Cincinnati. And as I previously indicated, while I don't know the nature of it exactly, Mr. McTighe, who represents Leland for Judge, has indicated that his wife was having some sort of a medical procedure today, and asked if the matter be continued. And again, he will be coming to represent a party in one of those cases on November the 3rd. And so I indicated to both of them that I would gladly continue these matters to that date.
Okay, do we need a vote?
Nope, you have the ability to just go ahead and continue any continuous matter.
Okay, as the chair, I will continue continue those two matters to the next category. Case number 2022R-400. As chair, I will continue those matters. And then the next category, which will continue for service, as chair, I will continue those matters.
Did you want to read those off just for the record?
Sure.
Or do you want me to read them off just for the record?
Later, read one.
Okay. Matters to be continued are 2022R-384, 2022R-385, 2022R-387, 2022R-388, 2022R-391, 2022R-399, 2022R-402, 2022R-412, 2022R-413, 2022R-418, 2022R-419, 2022R-421, 2022R-422, 2022R-423, 2022R-425, 2022R-433, 2022R-434, 2022R-435, and 2022R-441. That is the sum total of the matter to be continued.
Okay, thank you very much. Then, next on the agenda, we have a reconsideration in case number 2017R-130. Consider all outstanding matters vacating previous positions of the per diem fine.
Not fine, should be
Fine,
fine,
yeah.
so I apologize.
Consolidate all matters and stand and propose a fine of $2,500 and declare its committee terminated. This was friends of Gary Norton. 17R-13. We also have that in the ICWs. Mr. Executive Director, please provide the commission with background here.
Yeah, Mr. Horton reached out. Obviously, if you look back at the ICW, it was at the end of the file. Mr. Horton had a rather checkered history before the commission up through 2017. He first got in touch with me about a month or so ago. He gave me the story that he ended up submitting to us in writing that I reflected. It's on the last of the update ICWs in terms of getting a divorce, moving out of his house. His ex-wife then subsequently moved out of the house. There was also, I think he said, a flood in the house that destroyed records. So he doesn't have any more records. He can't really complete any more reports. And I indicated to him, we've dealt with these things before, we'll deal with it again, with it here, he's going to request, which we did. And I indicated to him that at least what I think we would all consider, it's still a fairly substantial fine we imposed. And so that's my recommendation for the fine of $2,500. And that we would declare the committee terminated so it doesn't have to worry about trying to complete reports that he essentially can't repeat or submit, I should say. I sent the ICW and my recommendation to him to let him know what was gonna happen. He responded back that he understood. Indicated he was fine with it. Certainly my inclination, to send this to Chris as well, because Chris would probably be the one who would be in touch with the AG's office if the fine is paid, to then say, stop collection efforts on the matters that we've already sent over there. But there are matters that are already over at the AG's office for collection. And if he doesn't pay the $2,500, then we won't tell the AG's office to stop collection. And so that's the sum total for my recommendation as it relates to this case. I'll be glad to answer any other questions the commission may have.
Okay, what are we, I'm a little confused here. So what exactly are we voting on? I mean, we voting to reconsider this and we're reconsidering it, and this is what the outcome will be, or we're just voting to reconsider this and make something.
We are voting to reconsider this, vacate all the prior findings in all the other cases where we imposed per diem fines, and instead impose a fine of $2,500 in all of the various, for all of the various cases collectively. And if he pays that, well, and declares committee terminated. And then, like I said, if he pays that, we'll take, staff, Chris primarily, but Chris or I will take care of notifying the AG's office that they will stop collection efforts on all of the other various matters that have already been submitted over to the Attorney General's office for collection on the even more substantial findings. So, I wondering whether I explained it to you, but that's where I'm coming from on this.
Well, as a practical matter, if some of those matters have been referred out to their outside counsel or whatever, how do they pull those back? They just tell them to stop, or
They
is there
just tell
some
them, yes, they just tell them
obligation?
to stop.
They gotta give them some money or something?
Nope, they just tell them to stop because they haven't been able to collect anything. And if they reach back out to us and say, hey, pay us X amount because for our efforts, we would be glad to do so.
You have a question?
Yes, my question was, I missed, first I heard that if he pays, the outside counsel gets nothing. Then I heard if they call and request payment, we'll pay them.
The AG's office.
The AG's office,
The
because you
AG's
get paid
office.
by the hour as opposed to.
No, not necessarily. Generally speaking, my understanding at least is when a matter, regardless of whether it's a commission matter or whatever, when the collections office, the AG's office sends something out for collection to that organization. And I've had conversations with them before. Whatever they negotiate, they get a portion of that negotiated agreement
But here,
outside counsel.
here, they're not, they're negotiating, we're reconsidering.
Well, that's
imposing
presuming-
a new fine, and then I'm hearing now they choose to pay us directly. I guess that's.
Well, this guy would pay us directly, we would get it, and what I'm saying is that the AG's office reaches back out to us and says, hey, you had sent these over to us, please send us something because you did send them over to us. We would gladly pay that to the AG's office, but that's who our deal is with the AG's office.
Okay.
I'm a question, Mr. But no more than the $2,500 we collected, correct?
Oh, yes, no, that's a percentage,
I just want to make sure.
it's a percentage, 9%,
Okay.
I think. Is where it is with the AG's office.
The great question. You were coming after it for more.
Mr. Chairman, that's a question for the second record. Just waiting for position. I can jump in.
He's had it, but go ahead.
Mr. Executive Director, what was the previous sum total of their miscellaneous? What they were.
For
what
this
was that
guy,
time? Yeah, what was the, like, what's his total bill that he knocked down?
I mean, if you look at, the numbers just there, I'm seeing close to what looks to be $120,000 somewhere around there. And that would be based on just these numbers, because they continue to grow up until we refer it. Then after we refer it, those numbers are pretty much set in stone, but they add interest to it as well. And so I don't know what the interest amount would be, but it's very substantial.
Okay, so is that your, okay, there's a second, okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. The motion, carried by vote of 7. All right, other business, the next meeting will be October the 27th. Oh, yeah, I got it.
Okay, all right. Just making
No,
sure
thank you
that you're working off the one I sent you.
Thank you. Well, you're right. All right, so then the next category, thing that we'll talk about is the appointment of the independent alternate member of the commission.
Correct. As we were discussing a little bit earlier, the statutory provision was enacted that has now obligated this commission to have alternate members on in circumstances where a member has to recuse himself or herself in consideration of a case. The appointment process, as they laid it out in the statutory scheme, is the same for all of the positions. So when the partisan positions are appointed, they will be done by names being forwarded from the respective caucuses in the General Assembly to the governor's office, and the governor will then appoint the partisan members. The unaffiliated or independent member is appointed by this commission and would be approved by this commission. As this went forward, and I have indicated to the person that I'll name here in a minute that I think in his 5 years on the commission, 4.5 years, I think he even said to me he only recused himself once. As I think back to all of the various years when independent commission members were present on the commission, in the first few years of the commission, I can think of the independent member recusing himself on a basis. I don't know if I want to say a regular basis, but aside from him, the independent member very rarely recused for any consideration. And I have informed the person whose name I'll mention here in a minute that the likelihood of him ever serving in this capacity is kind of slim. We'll see what happens with Mr. Knight. And whether he has an obligation to feel, he needs to be recused. But the most recent independent member of the commission was A. Scott Norman. I reached out and talked with him, and he and I had a fairly lengthy conversation about this occurring, what it meant, all those kinds of things. And that was about a month or so ago. He thought he would be interested. Actually, he pretty much said yes at that time, but I said, think about it, let me know. I followed Saturday, last week. I can't remember exactly. But more recently, I followed up and said, I anticipate putting it on the agenda this Thursday. Are you still okay with being appointed to this position for which there really isn't anything else? If he's never used, he never gets paid, nothing ever happens. And he said, yes, he would be happy to serve in this capacity. And so the name I'm bringing forward to you is most recent independent member A. Scott Norman, who, at least some of you had the benefit of working with. Ms. Hagan, Mr. Knight, and Mr. Lyle didn't. But Mr. Norman is a very good friend of mine. But he's a lawyer who works with Grange Insurance Company here in town. He has not voted in a primary election. I don't believe in his life. I've had that conversation. Although I will admit I did not check on him most recently, but we have had conversation about that. And so I think he proved himself to be a valuable member of the commission. He certainly understands the issues that this commission deals with. Has a feel for working with this group. And I say this group meaning all of you together and really past commissions. As and understanding, what the commission does, what its issues are, how it goes about doing its business. And so I bring that name to you. I would certainly recommend his appointment to this position. And if there's any other questions that I can answer from anybody as it relates to this, I'll be glad to do so.
Bill, just out of curiosity, so what years was he on the commission?
He was the immediate
Oh, he just
predecessor
came
of
on.
Mr. Knight.
Oh,
He was the
okay,
immediate predecessor of Mr.
okay,
Knight. And so he served from
that's fine.
August of 18, 17, 6, no, not 16. August of whatever year he was appointed, I don't remember, until January of 2022. When Mr. Knight was appointed to take his place.
Fine, same way. They do.
For the alternate or the?
Yeah, for an consecutive, well, it wouldn't be a consecutive.
It's
term,
not
so
consecutive,
because
right.
even though it was a.
Not,
It's a different
It's like a
position.
partial
Different
This is a different position. And I'm not trying to get Mr. Knight to resign, don't get me wrong here, but
So, I made this, now I'm getting a little warm in here.
but it's always been the,
Talking about a couple votes.
as I understand the statutory scheme, and as it's been worked out, for Mr. Knight to resign, he was appointed to replace Mr. Norman, and at that point, Mr. Norman could then, more or less retake the position of the independent, because he's not succeeding himself. And I could say that for all of them.
Fulfill the full term if he was filling his.
Really?
And then, yeah, that
That seems kind of,
be appointed
that
after
seems
that.
kind of
Yeah.
an odd way to go about it, but I mean, I didn't
Seemed
mention.
crazy.
Right.
To Christina's point, though, are we sure on the language? I mean, what she's pointing out, are we clear on that, that it's not?
It's a different position. This is not a.
No, I understand that, but does the language specifically say that?
Say what? I mean, I'm not.
As an alternate.
As
versus
an
an
alternate,
actual member.
yeah. that- As an alternate versus a full-time member, do you have,
Separate this-
can you do successive terms?
Oh, could you do successive terms?
Yes, that was her question.
No, that I would say no, because their language is the same. And so when, we're doing it now, presumably 5 years out, that term will end. He could not be appointed to that position again.
Could he come serve in his position? now?
He could come and serve in this position, and he could serve in that
He
position.
could.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's now it's all making sense.
All right, so I have a preliminary question. Before we would even speak on Mr. Norman and his particular merits, do we feel comfortable making the appointment on our own prior to the appointment of the other two alternates? No, I'm asking other commissioners.
Okay.
Because, I don't necessarily have an issue with it, but.
I don't have an issue.
Everybody else, thanks.
Just means we're on top of our game,
Right, we've done what we can do.
and I think we need to be.
Well, I mean, go ahead.
Well, I have
Or
one
both speak.
I guess the only question I have is, should we appoint the alternate independent before we have the other two from the governor? Because then we have to put in action whatever the machinations are for a recusal, somebody who can't make a meeting, et cetera. Because then we'll have to start operating. So my concern is that we bring them all in at the same time, if at all possible, so that we can educate them and we can educate ourselves on what the process is, because I think we're gonna be making it up as we go along. It's not prescribed.
So is it possible to make the appointment and then have I don't want to say clause, but yeah, but have it stated that he will start when the governor has appointed the Democrat.
I don't think that, period.
Yeah, well,
When are we required under the statute to go ahead and make an appointment? That's what dictates here.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. With all due respect, the way the statute reads, I don't have it open right now for me, because it is essentially paired with how members are appointed. And we had 45 days from the date that the statute became effective. And that was November or not, sorry, that was like September 17th or 18th or something like that. So we're in the middle of that 45-day period when the commission is supposed to be, when all of the members are
That's right.
supposed to be appointed. And I would argue that, and I'm not saying this because of Mr. Norman, I'm saying this because our responsibility, as I interpret it, is to make that appointment in the statutory period. Because the way the statute reads, again, similar to how other members are appointed, is if we don't make that appointment, then technically it goes to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to make the appointment if the appointment is not made, if you look at the statute. And so, in my opinion, we have a duty to complete this task regardless of whatever happens with the other members during the period of time that's, that's laid out in the statute, which is 45 days, which would give us until the end of, or it's like October 30th, 31st, something like that. I mean, it's not quite November, but it's late in the month of October. So technically we didn't have to do it today, but I would strongly recommend we do it in October, or else technically we would lose our ability to make the appointment, and it would go to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
Only for the independent.
No, technically for all, but that's
Well,
that's not our responsibility. I'm
But
only
is that
concerned
the
about the
same
commission's
with-
responsibility.
Current positions?
Yes.
I mean, for those of us who are already seated, if the governor didn't make an appointment in a certain period of time, because I don't think that was accurate. I think that.
I don't know that for sure.
I
don't know
that's already dragged on, right?
Correct. But as it relates to our appointment, that's technically what happens if the commission doesn't.
But generally, okay, so if the governor's office didn't make the recommendations or the appointments for any of our positions, because we're technically the ones that have to make the appointment for the independent, whether it's the alternate independent or whether it's the independent that is a seated commissioner.
Correct. Right.
If they don't make the appointment, we technically can't make an appointment of someone to replace or to be the independent because we don't have a full commission.
But we do because we have
Potentially,
an
but there
alternate.
is a full commission right now.
There is right now, but I'm giving a hypothetical. So if we didn't have a full commission right now and we were in the same period of time, how could we, let's say one of the Ds and one of the Rs hadn't been appointed. We wouldn't have a full commission to appoint an independent.
That is what occurred when Mr. Norman wasn't appointed until August of whatever year it was, 2017, 2018. Because we, I take a certain amount of responsibility for the fact that it didn't act on the outgoing independent member during the January, February period of that year. And then the governor's office didn't make appointments either. And so there was a period of time from March 1 till mid-August when the commission could not meet because we only had 4 members and we could not make an appointment during that period of time. As soon as the commission was recongregated with 6 members, then the commission held interviews and eventually appointed Mr. Norman to the position then. So I mean, that was the circumstance then. The circumstance now is though, as the elections commission, as this body, you have a responsibility, in my opinion, to fulfill this position that is identified in statute as the alternate member to the elections commission for the independent member. And so I believe it's imperative on us to fulfill that duty regardless of what happens to the other position appointments that are beyond our control.
So the Supreme Court typically does not step in to appoint.
They did not. They have had, they did not do it in only one of 2 occasions. In the very first time when the commission was appointing the independent member. You could say that because the appointments for the 6 partisan members was done in December, and the initial independent was appointed in January of 1996, after the commission had met a couple times. I think it was, if the 45-day hadn't passed, it was really close to it. I can't remember. But then the only other time was in the circumstance that, we didn't take advantage of getting someone appointed at that time when Mr. Grimshaw's term ended, before we appointed Mr. Norman, and nothing else was done. And so then the commission appointed Mr. Norman in August, and he commenced his position there. That's the only other time. Every other time, including this January, we've met our obligation to fulfill that position before the independent left his position.
So when was Ernie actually appointed by the board?
Yes.
No, I know he was, but when was that?
January.
I think January, and my first one was done at the board.
Because then Christina didn't come on until March of, what was it, the 3rd or something?
Correct.
So-
And there, and
So
we, as my
Well,
recollection.
no, I'm just
we had
trying to follow
conversations-
the thing, which on the independent bill saying.
Right. My recollection is we had conversations about whether, we should wait until you two were appointed, because Catherine and Dennis were going off. But again, we've got a window to make that appointment, and if we don't, then what could have happened was, he's like you indicated, you were appointed in early March, which is after Dennis Broner and Catherine Cunningham's terms officially ended. And so, technically, we would have been without a quorum had we been obligated to meet at that point,
And I know
if we
Dennis,
had not done the.
Dennis had told me when we had talked initially, he said, he may not get appointed until August, because he didn't get appointed until August.
Correct.
So there was a 9-month gap there for him to come on.
That's,
August, June.
Yeah, I was August, so.
I don't see it.
And,
were you replacing?
So this
Yeah,
was-
I'm replacing.
You were replacing,
Yeah.
you were replacing somebody though. That Marquetta Robinson.
I mean, historically, with respect to the political appointments, the R&D appointments, the General Assembly doesn't really start looking too closely at it until they realize there's that 60-day hangover, so to speak, period of time. So it's usually after the first of the year that they begin to look at it as a general rule.
Well, yeah, as I said, and Mr. Beatty and I were briefly discussing the parameters of all this. I said, technically, the names could go over to the governor's office right now,
That's right.
and they could make appointments to replace you, Mr. Kreitz, and you, Mr. Beatty, but they wouldn't take effect until January 1.
That's right.
That, I don't believe that has ever occurred in the commission's existence. My recollection is, somewhere along the line, in the first couple of days of January, I would have think, some appointments got made. And then I know there was a time when Mr. Taft's term was ending, middle of January, whenever it normally does. And he was making a series of appointments, and they had the names over, and he made the appointments in early January, like on his last day in office. That's a different story. But, I have not yet reached out to, and will do so probably sometime next week, to just send a letter along to leadership in the respective Democratic and Republican caucuses saying, hey, what's going on? And, just to give them a reminder. But yeah, it generally is not always a high priority.
It's not going to be a high priority because they're going into a new General Assembly. They're going to be picking the leadership team. That's more of a priority for them right now.
And like I said, the other thing is, especially right now with this alternate process, the General Assembly is not in session in I don't know how long. And you can't tell me they're getting together names
No.
to appoint alternate members to the Ohio Elections Commission and sending those to the governor for appointment. Yeah, and
Nor is
that's
the
just,
governor. looking
that's
at
just,
this.
yeah, that's just the practicalities. I'm certain all those various appointments that we saw listed were because they had to be made on a certain time period.
Right.
Or was the right person?
Or it was the right person, which or whatever. But anyway, I would strongly encourage the commission to make this appointment in order to fulfill our obligation, so that there can be no question that the commission has not done its duty and fulfilled the responsibility.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, perhaps a couple thoughts. Have we determined, do we need the person to be drawn as an employee? How are they going to be paid? I mean, the basic blocking and tackling.
They are only paid when they serve. And it is, and I thought I may not have explained it that well. Based on conversations I've had with the staff at the Department of Administrative Services, these are the first 3 alternate positions that have ever been created in state government. And so,
Right.
and so they are creating new positions for these 3 persons. They will be put on no different than any other per diem member of a committee or a commission, I should say. They are only paid if they are called into service. They are, I guess you would say they're employee, well,
No.
I don't think they're employees, but they have these special positions, permanent member of the elections commission, that have been created in the state system. But they will only be paid no different than, actually no different than former commission members were. When this commission was originally created, commission members were only paid for days on which they served. And they were paid $50 a day plus expenses. And so, and then that was up until the time when the commission became an agency. And so the alternate members are treated no differently than those types of members. And I don't know how many there are across state government, but there are a lot. But, you know, let's say you can't make the next meeting, I have to call him in. He would be paid $150 based on the way they have it set up in the statutes. If he were to say he had expenses, you know, for whatever it took for him to get here, we would be obligated to pay him those expenses.
Based on state, you know,
Based on state
requirements.
Right, exactly. I mean, for him, he would.
They don't
No,
get pensions for
No,
others.
I asked that question because I knew that would be of interest. And no, you do not. You are not otherwise, you guys are kind of considered employees, the way we have you set up.
Not kind of, we are.
You are.
We absolutely are.
Yeah,
We can't
absolutely.
keep your
Right, and so you get all those kind of things. This position does not. And I asked that question because I wasn't sure myself whether that was the case or not. And it took me reaching out to DAS to explain to them what was going on, because they weren't otherwise aware of this. And then the initial, I can't remember whether I talked to like the you know, deputy director in charge of personnel area or whatever. They passed it along to somebody else who, Jacqueline Waters or something like that, I can't remember her name. But she got back and she gave me full explanation of, yeah, we're gonna have to create new positions. We don't, you know, it's not like they could slot them into, you know, a kind of, you know, I'm slotted into an executive director 3 position. Chris is slotted into an administrative aide position, something like that, you know, which is in the state system. These are new positions created in the state system because of this.
So Phil, logistically, I'm still nervous.
I don't know that I want to get into logistics.
Well, I'm just thinking, so we have somebody, we appoint somebody, so Ernie is, say, he was ill that day. The person sits in the whole day.
Yeah.
Okay, so in my situation where I just recused myself today, that person would only sit in for that one case?
That was, while you were out of the room, that was a
Oh.
question that Ms. Hagan had asked, and I believe that would be the case.
So they had
Yeah.
a fraction of that.
A minute, divided by 150 a day.
That's all I would do.
What I think is gonna be interesting is when we're in a hearing, and we're an hour and a half or 2 hours into the hearing, and somebody makes a comment, and one of the commission members realizes that they have a conflict based upon that representation, then you've got to stop. And then I'm gonna have to bring in who the alternate is, and that alternate then is gonna have to go ahead and review the transcript or the video of all the testimony that's occurred up to that point in time before they can proceed and be able to vote on the record. I mean, it happens in court all the time.
You had to go there, didn't you?
Well, no, it's not that implausible though. I mean,
Oh, no, it's not.
That's,
It's not.
Okay, well, I mean, this is, this part is certainly beyond our control to a certain degree. I think we need to go back to the original question, which is, let me state what I'm gonna state first, but we need to go back to the original question is, do you feel comfortable making the appointment at this time without the others being appointed, okay? Then we will deal with the issue of, do we need to do Mr. Norman, or we need to bring others in for interviews, or find people on the street, or whatever we're gonna do. But
I bet we could find some.
that's
I
my
bet
joke,
you
that's my
could.
joke.
$25 a year,
Rick's lying.
Right. Okay, so is there any more discussion around, we've heard some different views here on do we feel comfortable making the appointment at this time based on, also the things that the executive director pointed out with 5-day time period, that we are within our obligation. Go ahead. Okay.
So I've been kind of sitting on this for a moment, and the question I have is related to procedure of interviewing or considering or appointing. Obviously, I don't know Mr. Norman, I've not started with him, could be a wonderful person, just certainly has proven to be in this context. I don't know outside of this context, can I?
Yeah, that's a.
But is it
Permissions
Is it-
Pretty good.
It's much better than think I'm gonna get sick and resign and.
It's doing great so far, going strong. Is the precedent that there wouldn't be an outside process for bringing people in to interview people? That it would just simply be a recommendation of somebody that is known of, that has requisite experience? Or is this something that the body is actually supposed to be actively seeking out independently? Or is that undetermined?
Well, in the normal course, for instance, when Mr. Knight was appointed, okay, we did go through a little bit of a process, and we actually had some folks come in for some interviews. However, to compile that pool, it was more of a combination of, we were asked if we know individuals that could be interested. And then we also look back to others who have shown an interest or went for it the last time and they didn't get it, or whatever it was, but a combination of those things. And then we did create a pool. Okay, so that is what occurred.
Okay. Good to know.
Now, so let me ask you this, and I guess this gets down to the core question of, that I'm speaking to you, is it, do you feel, do you feel uncomfortable with, let's assume that we decided today that we want to go ahead and, that we proceed with making an appointment of an independent within this statutory period of time. Would you like more information on Mr. Norman?
So I would my personal preference would be that the process be extended for just proceeding and extend that discussion, but I recognize the time frame is pressing. So just coming from the body of process, I'm used to hearing things out and hearing options out. And so even to hear from Mr. Norman, his expressed interest might be interesting. And maybe we don't have time.
I do have a comment to that, because I understand that it's a due process kind of a thing. I guess my concern is knowing that we have a time constraint and knowing when I first came in, and maybe this is not the case with you three, but when I first came in, it was so confusing. I thought everything was confusing. I thought the process was confusing. I do think it would be nice for someone who's popping in and out of the process, as the alternates, I think will probably be doing. It might be nice to have someone who has a working knowledge of the commission and how things go. And if you ask Scott Norman tomorrow, you know, about civil code, blah, 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 he could recite it. And that's, I think, a benefit to us, to know someone who, you know, to be able to bring someone who has a kind of a working knowledge of the commission, but not to say that I don't want to be disrespectful of the process, you know, either, you know, but I mean, we had the benefit of working with Mr. Norman and being able to, you know, kind of build that rapport. But I understand that we have 3 people sitting here who did not, so that can't be discounted either.
Right.
So.
Matt, I'd like to add a couple comments. So, you know, while I fully respect the 45-day statutory period, you know, clearly the governor's office, right, does not and that's not a reason not to do it, but the flip side of that, to me at least, is statutory or not, we represent taxpayers in this body. And this, whoever the person is going to make votes on issues. And to this point, we have not discussed whether we get process or not, what the process might be. I stood up there for a half an hour and Mr. Norman was one of the 7 people that were in the room. But, you know, if he were to walk in the room, I wouldn't know who he was. I haven't seen his LinkedIn profile, haven't seen his resume. I've heard it from Phil. I'm sure he's a wonderful and very qualified person. But I personally, in my role as a taxpayer representative, don't feel that I've done an appropriate amount of diligence to make an appointment today, statutory 45 days or not.
Okay, well, again, and that's why I wanted to bifurcate the questions. You know, so first, I mean, unless there's more comments or whatever, I would like to, you know, call to a vote right now. Do you feel comfortable appointing anyone to the independent position at this time? I mean, that's the first thing today. Yeah, today. I mean, I'm talking about that we're gonna do it. Because, well, let's say that the answer is yes, we do. Okay, just presupposing if the answer is yes, we do. Then, if the answer is yes, we do, then we can say, we're going to bring in, on the meeting on the 27th, we will, bring in Mr. Norman. Okay, we'll, or his resume can be circulated beforehand, bring in Mr. Norman. He can say a few words, what have you. Mr. Norman can leave, during new business, whatever, then we can take a vote with Mr. Norman. And if Mr. Norman is no on Mr. Norman, then we go out to a greater pool. Is that, and so presupposing the first question that we feel comfortable appointing anyone filling the position at all, would that process be potentially amenable, something like that?
If I'm answering that question, I think for me, it is a matter of vetting the individuals and is the final assumption that we have a pool of 1. Because it doesn't change anything if the day is today versus that day.
Oh,
So if that's the case, then I would say that we vote today.
no, I believe that it does because one, you and others will have the opportunity to see his credentials, you know, hear from him. Why, and what's his motivation for doing it? What's his motivation for coming for, you know, on a maybe $450? Okay, you can hear that out. And to me, if, you know, we're not satisfied with him and we vote no, we're back where we were. I mean, we're no worse off. So we're back where we were. If we are satisfied with him and everyone's comfortable with him, boom, we've done it. We've fulfilled the statutory duty. We're ready to go. At least that's to that spot.
Let me ask you a question.
Mr. Richter? How cumbersome, and this shouldn't, I mean, regardless, but I mean, do you have other people that you can reach out to?
Not, I guess my simple answer is no, not really. Aside from the other two gentlemen that we had, Mr. Knight ended up being appointed. And so, no, I don't have any other phalanx of people that I can go reach back out to. I have one particular guy in mind who, the original independent member, Norman Webster, has got to be somewhere in his mid to late 80s at this point. I think he's still on. He's
That's a good qualification.
somebody.
Yeah. Wisdom, love.
I can just.
Voting still alive.
The other independent members that the commission has had, one has passed away, one lives in Florida.
He's not coming back.
Right.
We don't.
And so I can't.
You may be back.
And, I've been holding my breath. I mean, one thing I would say, and if you guys, I don't care how you guys want to, but you're the one, as I always get back to you guys making a decision, not me. But were this appointment anything other than a possible if-come that may not be used at all, I wouldn't be bringing this person's name to you and saying, let's just go ahead and do this.
Bill, is this a 5-year appointment
Yes,
Oh, wow.
as an alternate?
yes.
That's.
And that's because, again, they mirrored,
Also,
they mirrored what was done initially. And so I understand where you're coming from, don't get me wrong, and I respect that. If you want to do that, I don't even know if Scott's available for the next meeting. It certainly possibly is, and knowing him, he'd probably be more.
Well, once again, we have to make the preliminary
Understood.
decision on if we feel. comfortable.
And I understand, I'm just saying, knowing him, he probably would be willing to come.
Contrary.
But if this, I would not be doing this if this was the actual position. I would not be saying, oh, just take my word for it, and this guy's a good guy. I think it's important for everybody to have a comfort level, et cetera. But I'm recommending it in this particular context only because of the nature of the position, and the position that, we've been placed in order to, have somebody available should it become necessary. I'm sorry, anyway.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Executive Director. My question goes to, and I don't recall the language that was inserted in the bill. Is there a requirement that alternate, let's just say for the independent, and Mr. Knight, you're not gonna be leading us. If Mr. Knight were to resign for some reason, there's no requirement that alternate steps in, correct?
No.
Okay.
No,
That, but the practical reality is that if that were to occur, whether it's me or the other one, the other
Right.
appointments into the alternate, that the mechanics are they would move into that until there is a new person.
Yes.
And
Right.
the practical reality is that it will take some pressure off to appoint somebody because you have somebody in the seat. So what's going to happen is that it's going to maybe not, well, other than the person might get paid more, it's going to naturally occur that person probably takes it, right?
Possible.
So, I mean, we have to consider that those are real practical possibilities, or you get in a car wreck and you're laid up for 2-3 months. Now that person is very active. I somewhat disagree with the assumption that it's on the if-come and it's rare. It is possible things happen and it could be significant.
True.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a quick question, make a recommendation on this?
Sure.
You give me a nod, just like-
Yes.
Sorry.
I sign.
So, and I'm not trying to be oppositional in any way. Again, this person could be perfectly wonderful and the right fit. And I don't necessarily need to see 50 people come through here and apply for this job. It's incidental or potential, longer term. But what I would recommend or like to see is something put into place that allows access to the public to be considered. Because I think if we're making it, based off of we know somebody, it can have implications that aren't intended, or at least from a public perception. So if you're on the outside looking in, that's government, they know somebody, that person. And granted, that's what happens in government because we know people and who might or may not have the qualifications. I recognize that.
I know.
But maybe there is, as there is for the governor's board of appointments, I think there's an application that you can put as an average Ohioan that you'd like to be considered. And although this is a very small and new and rare instance, maybe we would have something available through the Elections Commission if you would like to be considered for that independent appointment, just for the future reference, not necessarily this term even. But that way, there's just an option for the average person. The average attorney, that is put into code.
Mr. Chair, I think that there's four of us on this commission that have had the opportunity to work with Scott and I think that puts us in a different position than it does the other three it's been alluded to. I feel that we can go ahead and, delay this if we want to until the next meeting and maybe arrange an interview. We can always have special board meetings. We've done that before to go ahead and interview. I'm one of those people though, I'm black and white when it comes to, regulations and things of that nature. And if we have 45 days to fill it, then I think we have an obligation in the statute to make sure we do that. That means that we have to meet a couple more times, or we create a subcommittee to go ahead and do interviews, things of that nature. I'm not opposed to that. But I'm adamant that we need to complete, our obligations under the statute in compliance for that 45-day time period.
And do we know what that date is? Or
As I sit here specifically, no, but it is. That doesn't, and I'm pretty confident it is after the 27th meeting.
I agree with you to a point. I mean, the unfortunate fact is, right, if we waited to the last second and waiting to the last second does not, mean, in my opinion, to comply, you make a poor decision. Not that this is going to be a poor decision. I just don't, I don't feel that we've vetted out the appropriate process and I have the appropriate amount of information to make that decision today. More than happy to try to speed it up and do all we can, but, making poor decisions because there's a deadline, this is a poor decision, is a challenge.
I guess in my profession, Ernie, when it says that an answer will be filed 20 days after a complaint's been filed, we have to file it, okay? So.
Sure, but that
No, I'm not-
could be a continuance, it could be, right, there could be lots of things that keep it going. It's not a final, this is it, this is the decision, right? It's different.
I don't want to get into an argument. I just feel very strongly that when the General Assembly tells us that we're supposed to do something with a certain time frame, that we need to do that. Now, how we got to this point, I don't really want to talk about that at this point in time, but the bottom line is apparently we only have one candidate. We have a lot of work to do between now and the time that we have to go ahead and make a decision. It seems to me that we ought to try to make an effort to locate other people to interview. And if we have to do subcommittees or committees of the commission to go ahead and do that, at different times, I don't care what it is. I'm just saying from my personal standpoint, if we have to have this done by whatever the date is, November 1st, let's say, that we have it done by November 1st, if that means that, we have to have 3 more meetings between now and then that's what we do. That's just my point of view.
I guess when I already said my concern was, we could find out and he pulls it up, it's tomorrow.
No, we know it's not.
Because he said October, or it's October now.
Okay, so let me just kind of bring this to a head. Is there, some opposition with some good reason behind it was raised that we should not do an appointment until after the governor appoints the Republican and Democrat member. Where do members stand on that issue?
Actually defer to the revised code.
Are we divested of our authority to make a decision after 45 days? In other words, if we do delay that, all right, then does the statute specifically provide that we're divested of the jurisdiction to go ahead and make that decision, and that it then falls to the Chief Justice? I mean, there's a lot.
When I read it, I interpreted it that if the chief justice doesn't make a decision, we can until they do, but I may have read that.
Yeah,
I may have
It's
inferred
been
that.
a long time for me
Yeah.
since I read it too, and that's why I was asking.
It's a great question.
We are divested, we are totally divested, no, but the Supreme, the Chief Justice does have an ability to step in and make that appointment. Because that, again, Mr. Norman was appointed well after the vacancy was created, and the commission made that appointment, and, he served that a full term. So we're not totally divested, it's just that,
Depends on their mood. If they decide to step in, they can. If they decide that they're not going to, then they don't. So it's
As
a
Chief
win.
Justice will be leaving office at the end.
I just was thinking,
I don't know how that dynamic plays into it.
Right.
I'm looking something up.
Yeah, I was just looking up the exact date when the, when it went into effect. But I mean,
Mr. Chair, can I make a motion?
No, hold on, let's get this.
Get the actual date.
No, let's get this piece of information. I mean, we might as well, because that might weigh the individual's decision.
For some reason, I'm sure incorrectly, I thought that the legislation didn't go effect like September 15th, even though it was approved.
it's
So I
like,
think we have more time than October. But it was the 15th, or yeah, you're right, number nine, my math.
right, yeah, 45, and it's either September 14th or 15th. Is my recollection. Of course, legislation isn't loaded on the door. Oh, there we go.
For what it's worth, I'd be happy supporting this candidate if I knew there was a.
Effective date is September 13th,
45 days.
would be October 28th.
October 28th.
The day after.
October 3rd. That's the date,
October
28th. 28th.
It's the day after.
It's the day after our meeting.
That's the day.
That's the date.
Okay, did you have any other comment? We had someone who wanted to put a motion on the floor regarding this. We'll have your vote. Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we, make our recommendation for the independent candidate at our next meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion that's been made and duly seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion for clarification?
Yes, for clarification. I guess, if you just more fully fleshed out. I mean, I know
I don't
literally
want
what
to
you
put
mean.
that in a motion. I guess I'm just making the motion that we wait to make the decision and then the body to make the decision how we're going to do that.
Oh, how? Okay, that was like, I interpreted it differently, like we recommend that we would do it on the 27th. You're saying we were going to make the decision on how.
No, I'm saying we make our decision on the 27th, and this body can make the decision on whether or not they want to see other candidates,
Okay.
whether or not they want to see the resume, bio, et cetera, of Mr. Norman, or seek out other candidates, have a subcommittee, but I didn't want that in the motion.
Okay, fair enough.
So we need to decide how we're gonna do that between now and then, but we're making the appointment on the 27th.
Correct.
Sorry, what's happening on the 27th?
And I make
This is what's
the
happening.
recommendation. We're going to make the appointment of the independent alternate on the 27th.
Okay, we are going to.
So any committee work that needs to transpire so
Correct.
between now and then.
That's correct.
Okay. Any
Does
other
any of
questions?
that need to be official or can we make phone calls or is there, we have to perform with the governor has on his website?
Can we vote on the motion first?
Well, my vote is contingent on
Was it? Well, no, not necessarily, but, is there a second?
I second it.
Yeah,
Okay,
Mr.
all right.
Wright's already seconded.
Okay.
Can I have a clarification on the motion? please?
But,
Oh, can I have a?
yes,
clarification?
please, yes, is there any clarification?
I need to know the vote. I'm asking. So the motion is, just for me,
The motion is to appoint our alternate independent candidate for the Ohio Elections Commission at our meeting on the 27th of October. That's it.
okay, thank you.
You're okay with that, Mr. Price?
I second it.
Okay.
I certainly am. Thank you.
Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page. Okay, I'm fine, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anyone,
No, I'm good.
anyone? Okay. All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Voice. Call the roll, please, on this. This will be the vote now.
Understood. Ms. Hager.
Aye.
Mr. Lyle.
Aye.
Mr. Knight.
Nay.
Um,
Chuck
Ms.
Kaufman.
Kaufman.
Mr.
Mr. Kreis.
Aye.
Ms. Tavares.
Aye.
Mr. Beatty.
Aye.
Chair Beatty. That motion passes 6-1.
I do have a quick question, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if this is relevant at this point, but do we have the authority to form subcommittees in between that
Yes.
sunshine law and
Well, I mean, we would need sunshine law if we're meeting with 4 or more, but if we appoint a committee of 3, you know, then no. Because it's not, you know, we're not constituting a quorum.
And Phil, do you appoint that? Or who appoints the committee?
I could, but generally
Chair.
speaking, you know.
The chair.
The chair, or somebody else, you know.
Well, I mean, again, why can't we just say right here that we would be just directing the office, your office,
This is a man with no sleep over here.
well, he's here to do it,
Got a brand new baby.
to, you know, be in a position to, take in additional, applicants for the position.
Would that satisfy what, had the process that you would like to see?
Well, and
Honestly,
probably, I mean, honestly, and the reason behind my nay, as I understood the motion, is that, you know, we could come up with 100 candidates, determine none of them are qualified, but we have to pick one on the 27th. That was why I voted nay. Without knowledge of who those candidates could or could not be, I couldn't commit to that. So,
No, because we could always vote no, and if there's a no vote, then it just doesn't occur.
that wasn't how I understood the motion,
Okay.
which maybe
We
this
can all vote
message.
no.
I understood it as we had to pick one on the 27th.
No, we're having the vote on the 27th.
Okay,
That's what the.
yeah, fair enough. It was a
It's-
challenging
It
understanding.
makes sense, yeah.
So, you know, I think it would, But if, we come up and just isn't a candidate we feel is appropriate, and I have every expectation that we most likely will. But I just, probably, the answer is probably yes.
Okay. I mean, respectfully, I just want to make sure you guys have a comfort level with what we are going to do.
Yeah, my only concern is just access and transparency. It's not an indictment on anyone here not having afforded that or provided that by all means.
Okay, so, Lauren, I mean, before, I don't think that there's a need to start putting together subcommittees. I mean, we can decide right here on 3 bullet points of things that we're gonna do, whether it be post something on the website.
That's what we will.
Put something.
Yeah, I think that is.
Contact the governor's office,
This is
they
a
already
public
have
meeting,
applications.
that information is available.
Right.
We have a deadline, we have to abide by.
Good luck.
Yeah, we have,
Well, we will still take an action. Right. Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so 1, we're going to post the availability on the Ohio Elections Commission website. Okay. What's the second is that the commissioners will reach out to their various networks as to individuals or bodies that could be interested in the position and whether the position on the website. That'd be the second action. And for us to do that, it was so on. And then what would maybe a third action be? I think you would mention something.
Well, I only mentioned that, people that apply to governor to be appointed to a commission, obviously some are ours and some are D's, but there are some commissions and committees that require to be independent board members. And the governor's office may have something, I mean, they would be.
There are, like, for instance, it's the Ohio Civil Rights Commission. Like, for instance, they have independent members.
Okay.
As
So
an
maybe there might be
example.
interest there.
Right, so would the action be that we reach out to the governor's office, or the boards and commissions director, whatever the position is called, indicating that we have an independent position open, and if they have resumes or individuals to send them forward?
I will certainly reach out to them, yes.
Okay.
Can you circulate to the commission exactly what constitute your eligibility to apply as a independent or,
I will, it's simple enough. You have to be a registered elector in the state of Ohio and not be affiliated with either part, with any major party, which currently right at the moment there's Democrat, Republican only.
for 3 years, right?
Yeah, and I think it's, there isn't any specific
No, I understand that.
frame. I generally look at least 4 years back.
Okay.
Specifically, although when I am investigating someone, I look back as far as I can, just to have a basic understanding of if they ever voted in the primary election. But it's generally 4 years is what.
or contribute to a candidate.
No, you can contribute to a candidate. I mean, that may
Beforehand.
impact how you are,
Impact.
how you approach him,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that you are affiliated with a party. An Ohio affiliation is identified by whether you voted in a primary election.
So even if somebody served on the executive committee of the Democrat or Republican Party, that would not constitute a party affiliation? Is that-
I'm sorry, say that again?
If they served on the executive committee of a Democrat or Republican committee, local party committee or state party committee, that they would still be considered an independent?
They would still, the way we've always interpreted it, because that's generally the way Ohio law interprets it, is you identify a party by voting in a primary election. And so that's what I have done, is when I have investigated in the past, the person that we have appointed as an independent member or an unaffiliated member, is I check their voter registration records and make sure they haven't voted in a primary election in 4 years, but then I also ask much more voting.
And Bill and Chris, when do you believe that you can get this out on the website?
As long as I
Do
know
that today, right?
what verbiage you want me to put on the website.
Yeah.
And how you want it placed on the website, whether I need to create a new page and link the page to the home page or where it needs to go. That, I should be able to, by the end of the day, have it live. If not, it would be early tomorrow morning, just depending on what you want.
Right.
I'm gonna say we won't make it that grandiose, just, you know, a request for anyone interested in potentially being the unaffiliated member of the Ohio Elections Commission. And then I can give you some of the statutory provision that talks about, you know, the independent.
So we have a link that has the application, so they fill that out, so everyone's filling out the same thing.
At this point, I was just looking at, you know, considering where we are time-wise, just getting names. Officially. You know, we could put an application out there. I'm not saying no, but
I'm just saying it would synthesize the time frame for us to review to see if they're truly interested, they'll fill out the application. Or if you just want their bio, that's fine too, but
Right.
that way they would have the same information that they would have to fill out anyway.
right.
Well, it puts everybody on the same level.
Yeah.
playing field too.
And that could just be on the website, a link, click here for the application.
I will devote my afternoon to getting that posted.
Thank you. Tired, Chris.
We should
I'm so
probably,
sorry.
should probably plan on an executive session under 121.22 for the next board meeting, in the event that people want to be interviewed. Yeah, that makes sense. The other thing is, what kind of, I mean, we need some kind of, help me understand what kind of timeframe you guys want me to impose, because, you know, I mean, it's not a matter of taking applications on the 26th and expecting someone to be present on the 27th.
Enough time for you to review and make recommendations that you already have.
Because we can add something that, you know, the expectation is someone will be present on the 27th.
Well, yeah, you can put that up front, and so the deadline can be Friday the 21st or Monday the 24th.
I'd probably
I'd say
prefer Friday
21st.
first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Then that'll give you time to, I mean, we're not gonna have hundreds, so. You know,
We might be
what
looking
comes in the
at-
21st, you know, that'll give you time to circulate them to us.
Yeah.
On the 24th, and hopefully everyone at the time that it's looking at those.
How's the calendar look for? I mean, not, there's one more preliminary review that will take us some time, but that is similar to days with one more preliminary review. So there'll be time there, so to go through this.
Not as popular as we think either.
No.
No, I mean, I don't expect like a drove of applications. I just think it's a good exercise. I don't have something trying to trump your person, but believe me.
If you did, that would be unusual for, I mean, I think it's hard to find people. So we're lucky we have Ernie, the general labor market.
Point's probably-
No, it's hard to find independents anyways.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, it's-
Ernie's not gonna be sick and Ernie's not gonna have anything, so we don't.
He's gonna drive carefully because he threw something out about.
Yeah, you just have to watch those other.
You went to a really dark place with this. aren't you?
I know.
We're sprinkling you about.
I'm not playing lottery today, that's for sure.
Okay, well, again, that didn't require a vote, that was just, very, the process. Yeah. Thank you, Director's cooperation. Is there any other, new business?
Nothing else that I have, Mr. Chair.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.